وللنبي سل يا سلام منا صلاة مع سلام يوم الجزاء أحلى سلام مما نخاف يا مجيد قل يا عظيم أنت العظيم قد همنا هم عظيم وكل شيء همنا يأمر باسمك يا عظيم يأمر باسمك يا عظيم يأمر باسمك يا عظيم قالوا باب الرجاء والناس قد رقدوا
ومنت أشكوني هاي مولاي
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
ومنت يا أماني بكل أجهبة ومن عليه بك أشفي الدر أعتمد
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
أشكوني إليك أمورا أنت تعلمها ماني على حملها صبر ولا جلل
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
وقد مددت يدي بالذل مبتهلا إليك يا خير من كنت إليه يدعو
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
فلا تردنها يا ربي طيبة فنحن جودك يا ربي كل من يريد
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
بشرى لنا
إلا الهدى زاد العناء ومن هدى والدهر أنجز وعده والبشر أضحى معدنا بشرى لنا إلا الهدى زاد العناء ومن هدى بشرى لنا إلا الهدى زاد العناء ومن هدى
يا نفس طيبي باللقاء يا عين قري أعينا
يا نفس طيبي باللقاء يا عين قري أعينا
جمال المصطفى
أنواره لاحت لنا بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد العنا ومن هدى
يا طيبة ماذا نقول وفيه قد حل الرسول
يا طيبة ماذا نقول وفيك قد حل الرسول
وكلنا يرجو الوصول
لمحمد نبينا بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد العنا ومن هدى بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد العنا ومن هدى والدهر أنجز وعده والبشر والبشر أضحى معلنا بشرى لنا إن الهدى زاد العنا وفي الهدى بشرى لنا إن الهدى زاد العنا وفي الهدى
حيث الآمال ربها قد ظل حل المجتنى
عين الآمال ربها قد ظل حل المجتنى
وبالحبيب المصطفى
صفى وطاب عيشنا بشرى لنا إن الهدى زاد العنا وفي الهدى
صل وسلم يا سلام على النبي ماحي الظلام
صل وسلم يا سلام على النبي ماحي الظلام
والآل والصحب الكرام
ما أنشدت بشرى لنا بشرى لنا إن الهدى زاد العنا وفي الهدى بشرى لنا إن الهدى زاد العنا وفي الهدى والدهر أنجز وعده والبشر أضحى معلنا بشرى لنا إن الهدى زاد العنا وفي الهدى
بشرى لنا إلا المنى زاد العنا وفي
الله على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Anyway,
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm sitting on a table with a musician, and he was concerned. The program child told us that it was good. It was good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was amazing. We've got now time for our next speaker, and then we're going to look at the buffet for dessert. So Chef Ahmed is a brother, a teacher, a mentor, someone that I have seen over my years growing up. Started off as a brother, we used to work together, and then we went and studied overseas in Tenerife for 10 years. And mashallah, has come back with a wealth of knowledge. And now we see him as the light in Australia, where young people look up to him as a leader, as a mentor, someone to aspire to be like, and someone who guides not just young people, the community. So it is a great pleasure. Someone I respect immensely. For me to have Chef Ahmed here with us this evening, he's a huge supporter of benevolence, all the way from Sydney. Please make welcome Chef Ahmed.
last time I was here in Melbourne, and the same group was performing Nour al-Hadith. It was in a slightly different premises, but I remember there were balloons that were blown up and they were stuck up around the hall. And during their performance, the energy that was being produced, not by their voices, albeit their voices were beautiful and wonderful, but by their souls. The energy that emanated from their souls was so powerful that it began to burst the balloons in the room. So I assume that's why there's no balloons that were blown up today, because otherwise the same thing would have happened. And this brings us to the point of actually understanding, before we talk about soul food, what is the soul and what is the human being? You see, if you ever want to understand a substance, then you need to know what are the essential elements that compose that particular substance. We human beings seem to be experts in every single thing that surrounds us in this existence. But when it comes to ourselves, we are unable to explain the functioning of the human body. The human body itself, we learn that there are a number of systems within the body. There's something called the skeletal system. There's something called the circulatory system. There's something called the nervous system. There's something called what's the fourth? Respiratory system. I remember that from year 6. My teacher, Mr. Tilling, was a great man who was tall and big, and he had huge palms. And whenever the kindergarten students used to come with messages from their teachers and knocking on the door, he'd be growling and scaring them, and we as students would laugh. But it's people like that who not only had big palms, but they had huge souls. He differed with me in religion. And I've still been trying to locate him and search him up until this particular day. In fact, a couple of days, my daughter, she said to me, tell me stories of when you were young. And my wife said, oh, not again, I've heard this story so many times. And so I continued to tell her stories. But this particular teacher that I had was so powerful and impacting on my life that to me, he was my mentor in that particular school. In fact, the name of the class that he would take every single year, he wouldn't take any class other than year 6. And you know how you give colours, names of colours to your classes, right, to your grade. The same thing in Victoria? Same thing, so we're not too distant. The name of our class was 6 Gold. It was known at Picnic Point Public School. When you get to year 6 and Mr. Tilling's in charge and he's your teacher, you're going to enter 6 Gold. Nowadays, with all the fuss about the Rio Olympic Games, every second marketing mass email campaign that you get tries to intertwine the word gold. So I bought New Balance shoes 5 years ago, and they're sending me emails saying, don't you want to go for gold? What, you're giving me an opportunity to participate in the Olympics? No. They've got some new style of sneakers that are colored gold. So everyone tries to capitalize on that, but the words that we are in fact exposed to and the experiences that we are accustomed to as human beings have a profound impact on the lives that we live. But it was that same Mr. Tilling who, I being the only Muslim in the class of that particular year, he says to me on the day in which he's organized the school barbecue, he said, Ahmed, he said, I've got vegetable patties for you on the barbecue. Because he knows I couldn't eat their sausages and their other meats. He says, I'm cooking vegetable patties that I got specifically for you. To me, he was a man with a soul. And I don't know why I'm speaking about Mr. Tilling, but there must be a reason. And those that are connected on the frequency of the souls will be able to understand that, because right now I'm not speaking words. but rather I'm speaking a language of the souls that comes with no prior preparation nor thinking. And for those that are in fact attuned to that particular frequency, will interpret on their particular level. And Mr. Tilling comes in again, and he says, when we play bases, which was a type of a softball game that he had devised, where we come and we manufacture the rackets and the bats. He used to bring in his big bandsaw into school. Nowadays you can't do that because he gets sued for, I don't know what, if someone cuts their finger or gets a drop of blood on the tips of their fingers. He used to bring his bandsaw on the back of the ute. And he used to come in and he used to get these big parts of plywood. And we used to sit there tracing the back. And he'd come and he'd cut it for us, and we'd sand it, and we'd paint it, and we'd design it. But we used to play like a little softball game. And our field was quite big, but on the boundaries of the field were residential houses. And so when he used to pitch the ball, he said, anyone who hits the ball over the fence where? The houses of the neighbors, he says, gets a pack of Mars bars. And for the entire year, we'd play on a Thursday afternoon, and there'd be high school students of the local high school who were previous students of his that would come back to the school on a Thursday afternoon and take part in the game called Bases with Mr. Tilling in the current Year 6 class. And I remember every single Thursday, I want to be the one that would hit the ball over the fence. And the nice thing was that he'd then go and lift you over the fence and jump into the neighbor's, even if they had dogs. Jump over the neighbor's fence, into the yard and get the ball. And one day I didn't. And I hit the ball over the fence. And at the end of the year, he gave me a pack of 6 Mars bars, not those fun-sized ones that your parents buy you because they don't want you to eat all those Mars bars, but a pack of 6 huge Mars bars. To me, that was gold. To me, that was soul food. What do you mean that was soul food? That's food for the body? No. That was soul food because it was done with by a person of principle. It was done with intention. It was done with purpose. It was done by a person who was able to transcend all barriers, all colors, all veils, and deal with people based on the innate qualities and virtues that they themselves have been given. That's what we're talking about when we discuss the matter of the human being. If I come back to understanding what is the essential elements, what is the composition of a human being? We said we're experts about everything, but what about the human being? We named 4 systems. What were they? The respiratory, the circulatory, the skeletal, and the nervous system. You notice this, and Mr. Tilling was the reason I said that. Mr. Tilling was the one that taught us that. We had a page in our science books, we divided it into 4, and we draw examples of each one of those systems. It was in his class that I, in fact, learned the names of the parts of the body. Where's Dr. Ahmed Ali? What is brother? I saw him this morning, and he looked exactly like you when he. And I remember him from the live text. But I remember the names of the parts of the body. The clavicle and the scapula and the phalanges and the femur and the tumor and I don't know what. My daughter says, where did you learn those things? You didn't study science at university or medicine? No, I didn't, but I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Tilling. And he provided incentives for us if we memorized the names of the bones of the human body. He was a man that used to play games with us. I used to love going to school. There are many children nowadays that hate going to school. And I always ask my students, I say, think back to school. What was your favorite subject? Someone says science, geography, maths. I said, what was your favorite class back at primary school? Year 3, Year 4, Year 6, kindergarten? I said, why was it your favorite? Because of your teacher. Therefore, the teacher, the nature, the demeanor, the personality, the character, the inspiration, the energy that your teacher holds will have a direct impact on you as a human being, on you as a soul. And that is the essential element of the human being. If we can become a people where souls connect with souls, where spirits speak with spirits, where you no longer need to learn the language of the tongue of a people but you could communicate from heart to heart. The indigenous people of this nation in every single locality spoke their own language. They were considered their own people, their own nation, their own tribe, their own society. But they were a people who were in fact stewards of this land. They upheld the principles of sanctity and sacredness, of honor and respect for the land upon which they lived. They were true human beings. And to be a true human being means you need to reconnect with who you actually are. And so before we try and learn about the world around us, we actually need to start learning about who we actually are. At university, you can study everything, but show me which degree can you earn and acquire which you can call yourself a master of yourself. That's a master of psychology. A master of it. I'm not talking about a theoretical understanding of the human psyche, but I'm talking about really being a master of yourself. Meaning being in control of yourself, not being controlled. Because many of us nowadays operate on autopilot. What's autopilot? You get kicked, you kick twice. You get sworn at, you swear twice. You get insulted, you insult twice. Harm is done to you, you'll do harm to others. Well, that doesn't sound very different to the jungle. It doesn't sound very different to the animal kingdom. So what difference is it? Well, in fact, the Arabs defined the human being. When they defined the human being, they said the definition of the human being is twofold. The human being is, number one, an animal, a creature. So just like any other creature, an animal. But the human being is an intelligent animal. And that is the distinction between the human being and the rest of the animal kingdom, is that he or she possesses intelligence. But what is intelligence and where is its place? We'll be told that the place of intelligence is the mind. So what is the role of the mind? The role of the mind is in order to stop and refrain the human being from performing and committing those actions which are to the harm of both themselves and those around them. And if that ability is no longer being exercised, then we can say we are no longer mindful human beings, but we are mindless human beings. We are no longer people possessing sanity, but we have become insane. And this leads us to the observation in the modern world that there are many examples of insanity. And our legal scholars of tradition, in fact, define the lowest level of insanity and madness. And they actually mention this definition when they start speaking about what is the length or the distance of travel that you are required to undertake before you can begin to combine and shorten your daily prayers. Because sometimes the scholars try and throw in a few jokes in the boring old classical textbooks in order to incite some type of energy and motivation within the students that are sitting cross-legged on hard floors without any air conditioning and undergoing extreme amounts of commitment and sacrifice for endless years. And so they'll throw in a few jokes and they say the lowest forms of madness and insanity is to leave your home not knowing where you are headed. And how many human beings leave their home not knowing where they're headed? Because they wake up and they brush their teeth and they take a shower, they change their clothes and they iron their clothes and they eat their breakfast and they get in the car and they turn it on and they go on autopilot on Google Maps. It's all taken care of. And so therefore, the mind is no longer being exercised. It brings us to the importance of intention. What does it mean to actually have an intention before you do things? You see, the difference between an intention and an action is that there can only be one action at one given time. But there can be multiple intentions connected to the one action. Therefore, it is no revelation that the intention is greater and more magnified than the action. Because you're no longer limited by what you can physically perform as a human being. But now, the ocean is expanded and infinite and open and only limited by the imagination that you have. And so a place where I spent many years studying the tradition of Islam, the local people there, and particularly the mothers, before they sent out their children to school in the morning, they'd actually teach them this principle of mindfulness. And they say, oh my child, oh my boy, when you go out today, if you find a blind man crossing the road, hold his hand and take him by your hand in order to allow him to cross the road safely. They say, oh my boy, if you find the door of a place of worship open, then close it just in case some animal comes and spoils it for the rest of the people that are using it. There was once a father in his home, and there was a huge bang outside of the home. And so the little boy ran to the window. His dad called him. He said, oh, my son. He said, yes. He said, those steps that you took to the window. Big bang, right? We all do that. And we're driving on the road, and I do this. You're driving on the road and you see a police car and a couple of cars next to it. You're driving like this and you're looking back. It's none of your business. What are you going to do? You're going to benefit them? Why are you looking back? You're bringing harm to yourself, and you're a sticky, big, nosy parker. None of your business. Worry about things that are, in fact, to your benefit and to the benefit of people. And so this father, he says to the son, he said, oh my son, those few steps that you took to the window, what were your intentions? What were your intentions? Are you just being sticky, big? You just trying to find out what has happened? Or did you have some purpose in doing that? Trying to teach our children that whenever they do the most mundane of things, there needs to be some benefit for the soul, some food for the soul. I was speaking with your mayor, Paul, earlier this evening. And I said, usually, and when Sister Sarah was introducing the night, I said, usually, in these type of events, they have the main performance, and they have the speeches, and the lectures, and all the official proceedings, and then they feed the people. I said, this is a strange event. They're feeding our bodies first. The first thing on the program, feed your bodies, eat, have a chat, and then we start with the rest of the program. Said, that's quite interesting. And so Paul said, that's the way it should be. He's a man of the soul. And I hope that these words can go back to him, because I'm unfortunate that he's not here for us to continue this conversation. But I was extremely taken aback by the conversation that I had with him at the table. Because he was telling me, he said, you know when human beings are hungry? I said, yeah. He said, they're not going to be able to focus on what's being said. Because you're hungry, all you're thinking about is your stomach. And if all you're thinking about is your stomach, no matter how good the speaker is, you're not going to focus on that. And so it's a pretty good thing that benevolence did the food first. So maybe this is going to be a custom that is going to change the entire programs in Melbourne and perhaps Australia. And perhaps it is because the Melbourne people are more cultured. They're more cultured than the rest of the capital cities in Sydney, because they've got their wonderful cafes and museums and galleries and all of these type of things. But on a more serious note, we've discussed the soul, the essential nature of the human being, but what is it that we're referring to when we're talking about nourishing the soul, changing the world? What is it that actually nourishes the soul? We know that food has a magical effect on the functioning of the human body. But what is it that is going to magically entrance the soul? There's only one thing that is going to magically entrance the soul, and that is other souls that have already been magically entranced. people that have been changed. I've spoken about Mr. Tilling in my Year 6 days. I'm going to speak about my first year at university, but not at university, unfortunately, but I was a pretty shocking salesperson. And one of the first part-time jobs I took was commission-based, selling knives. They were American knives, Amjad. Cutco. I don't know if they're still around. They're still around? Okay, Cutco knives. They're not as popular nowadays anymore. Not sure why. Maybe it was the method of selling and marketing that they did. But I tell you what, these were knives that they tell us. The handle of the knife was made of resin, the same stuff that they make bowling balls out of. The rivets that they punch into the handles of these knives, 3 rivets, were full rivets from one side to the next, the same type of rivets that they use in aircraft. And they would also tell us that if you were to dig up a Cutco knife from 50, 60, 70 years ago, and it was blunt and it needed some work, you can send it into the office and they will resharpen it and redo it and give it back, no problems. These were same knives that would be able to cut through 5-cent pieces, rope and leather without any problems. Now, these particular knives, why was it that I mentioned this? I've now told you before. This is the sales?
Yeah, first year.
Exactly, yes. People that have been transformed, they're able to transform others. Now, I only had 2 customers that bought from me. One was my grandfather, God's mercy be upon him, because he came to our place and it was a big family gathering, and Mum said, look, why don't you do a presentation, like a demonstration to your grandfather in front of everyone. So I think he only bought from me the 1 knife because he didn't want to embarrass me. And the other person that bought it was my uncle's wife, who still uses it till today, but I think she really liked the knife. Anyhow, if you believe in something, this is what they taught us. If you believe in, we had to undergo 2 weeks of training regarding the qualities of these knives, the attributes of these knives, how good they were. The idea was that you as a salesperson need to be convinced of the sales pitch. If you're not convinced of it, you won't be able to convince others. That's something I learned early on. In that particular area, you need to believe, and I did believe in the knives. You need to believe that these knives are better than any other type of knives. They were expensive, $1,400 for a set of 2 knives, but they were good knives. And if you believe in it, then other people will actually be able to see and recognize them. So we're people who've been able to become people who are in touch with the essential nature of us as human beings, meaning our souls, and to dig out that internal power that is there, then other people are going to be able to recognize that. They'll smell it from afar, they'll see it from a distance, they'll hear it, whatever language it is that you speak. And how many times it is that we're able to meet people, sometimes for the first time, not know anything about them, but feel some type of attraction. Is it the bodies that are attracted to one another? No. But it's the souls. You see, our bodies change. We're born and we undergo maturity and puberty and we become adolescents and adults. But the fact of the matter is that we're not going to remain physically beautiful all of our lives. As much as our women and our men want to believe that they are beautiful and pretty and attractive and handsome, guess what? Fast forward 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to be a different matter. So if you're placing your bets on your physical beauty and appearance, then you've got a pretty big problem coming up. But there is one part of you and I as human beings that doesn't change. In fact, it can change for the better and only continuously improve. As the more wrinkles that you acquire and the more inclined you are when you walk and the greater reliance that you have on walking sticks, your soul continues to grow in its beauty. But only if you spend the time nourishing it. If you spend an hour a day, 2 hours a day going to the gym, then eventually you're going to become a person whose muscular system is going to strengthen. And if you spend that similar amount of time working on your soul, but the question then comes, and this is what I'm going to focus on in the next couple of minutes, how is it that you can refine that soul? We want to change the world. And guess what the world is made up of? The world is made up of souls. So therefore, if every soul begins to work on itself as its own little project, it becomes a master of itself, then we eventually have a change in the world. But how is it that we work on that soul, on that self? That first of all requires a diagnosis. But the diagnosis will only happen when you begin to feel certain symptoms of illness, disease, and pain. Earlier this afternoon, I had a bit of a headache, and I felt it. And I got a good head massage from Shafi, where is he? And the good oils, and now they've just got some peppermint oil, and it's all going really, really well. But there were the symptoms. Ah, there he is, he's sitting on the day. Well done, free massages there. So you feel those symptoms, you see the symptoms. So when Shafi asked me, he said, how are you feeling? I said, oh, I'm doing really well. Should I say it or should I not say it? You know, if I didn't say it, I still have the headache till now. But I'm doing really well. But I've got a bit of a headache. He said, oh, okay, no problem. You want a massage? I said, oh, all right, sounds good. He said, you want to use the oil? I said, yeah, there's this oil, use the oil. And he started to burn me. That time, I don't know what was in it, but I think the burning sensation started to overcloud the pain of the headache. And they're selling these bottles of oil for I don't know how much. So these symptoms, when we actually act upon that, I could have stayed quiet and said everything's fine, but there'd be no change physically. But I spoke up and I recognized the fault, the wrong, and the incompleteness in my physical body, and I got some help. The same thing when you have a fever, you have a stomach ache, or you have some other type of pain in your body. You go and see your local practitioner, your local GP, and you get the help that you need. That's beautiful, and that's easy, you know, because you can just swipe your Medicare until they get rid of it. You can continue to swipe your Medicare, and you get those consultations, no problem. But hang on. Where do you go to get a consultation for someone that's going to help you with your soul? They say, well, you've got 10 free visits to a psychologist after you get a referral from your general practitioner. Hang on, I don't want a psychologist that's learned in some institution that is simply theoretical construct. I want someone who's actually going to help me. No offense to any psychologists that are here. What does it mean to seek help for the self? We're talking beyond these general prescriptions. We're talking beyond drugs that you take because you're feeling in a certain way and trying to change that chemical composition and imbalance of the human body. That might have its place. But when we're talking about that soul, who is it that I can knock on their door and seek that advice and seek that counsel and seek that help? Usually it's going to be that's how you go see a life coach. What do you mean see a life coach? See a life coach, they charge you $250 an hour. It's cheaper to see a GP. We're not talking about life coaches. You can't be an expert on the soul. And they're going to get rid of me now. Stop talking about souls and the pounding into life coaches and psychologists and all these things. You can't be an expert, you can't be a master of the soul by taking some 6-month course and then charging people hundreds of dollars. That's not what it's about. When I studied under my teachers, they didn't charge a cent. And their homes were wide open. And they take anyone at any hour of the day. Mr. Tilling wouldn't care, whatever it requires for him to give and to make you feel happy. These are the real masters of the soul. These are the real people that are able to provide that sustenance and that nourishment for a people, for a creature, that are calling for help. And so the call is there, but who's going to answer that call? Thank you.
Thank you sincerely, Chef Amjad. Please forgive us about me. You reminded me of my year 9 teacher. I was reflecting over a teacher that I remembered. She was my English teacher, Mrs. Sharp, and she was an elderly woman. And she taught me in year 9 and she taught me in year 12. And the reason I was reflecting why I remember her is because she was beyond an English teacher. She not just counseled me. She was my diary. She said to me, just write me essays about how you're feeling, and I'll just check them. And what she was really trying to say is that I'll be there for you. It wasn't an essay that you were writing. I'll be there for you. So I still remember Mrs. Sharp. And Paco knives, I got them too. Yep. I was up then. It was table of nipples here that was selling $1,000 or so dollars, and I was just being nice to him. I don't know if I believed in the product, but that's what brotherhood and sisterhood is all about. As for life coaching, I was seriously thinking about that career path, but I think I'll take a rain check on that one. Thank you so much for everybody. Thank you so much for coming here this evening. What we're going to do now is open up the dessert table, buffet, tea and coffees there. Take your time, going across, help yourself to tea and coffee, some dessert. But I will end the formalities here, and thank you.